Hey, we're back. Kevin Trudeau here. Everything they don't want you to know about. Thanks for joining me. We have the probably the pioneer, the true superstar in exposing the Great Oz, pulling back the curtain of the Great Oz of the New World Order and the powers that be around the world. David Icke, calling in from the UK. David, thanks for being my guest.
Pleasure, Kevin.
How many books have you written, like 20?
Yeah, something like that. I'm just writing another one now because as you get more and more information, as the days, the weeks, the months, the years pass, there's more dots to connect together, and the picture becomes clearer. But, of course, we're now in a period where it's not really hidden anymore to anyone with eyes to see. It's blatantly in our face.
Now, you've been doing this for quite a while, and you really were a pioneer going out there talking about secret societies like Bilderberg, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, the various bloodlines of the royal families and so forth. When no one else was talking about it, and you traveled all over the world exposing this, how has things changed with people being open or seeing that this is what you've been saying is true?
Well, it's an interesting question because I've kind of, as you say, been a barometer of this, because when I started talking about this nearly 20 years ago, first of all in the UK, I got massive ridicule and rejection and often abuse. And then I started moving to North America as people were inviting me there, and I've now been to 50 countries researching this and talking about it. And the difference now is fantastic. There was a time, not a great deal of time ago, when I couldn't fill a phone box. I've talked in parts of America and got 8 people, and now it's thousands. And the people are opening their minds to possibilities which they would have rejected by reflex action before. And one of the big reasons for this, Kevin, is, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, this is moving from, well, it has moved from sometime over the rainbow. This is coming, to it's on the daily news, on the hour, on the half hour, that this centralization of power and this Orwellian police state, this global Orwellian police state, is moving in so fast now that you can see the bars. Before they've hidden the bars. The prison's been unfolding and through stepping stones, one layer added to another layer, and there comes a point where it has to break the surface, because if it wants to transform society in its image, i.e. a centralized fascist global state, there comes a point where that structure has to show itself, and we're in that period now. So it's an interesting time. It's a very, very interesting time, because it was always going to be like this. It was always going to have to be in the face of the mass of the people before most people opened their eyes and faced it, because before it's there where they can't ignore it, they'll just put it aside, put it somewhere, in the shadows in their mind, and just forget about it. But now we can't forget about it if we want our children, indeed ourselves, to live in anything approaching a society based on freedom.
Now, the people that rule the world, in effect, what is their ultimate objective? You mentioned a centralized police state. Explain this.
Well, if you are a few and you want to control the mass of people, then you have to centralize decision-making. The more diversity of decision-making you have in any area of life, the less control any central point is going to have over that. So what's been happening, and this doesn't go back a few years or a few decades, this has been unfolding for thousands of years, as these bloodline families have moved incessantly forward to this end. And if you look at the way societies are structured, you can see this. If you look at the way corporations and business and banking has gone, you can see this. For instance, there was a time when you had a tribal situation in the world where the people in the tribe, the relative few, were making decisions about what happened in their society. These tribes were eventually brought together under something called nations, and suddenly a few people are now dictating to what were before many, many, many tribes and dictating from the center what was going to happen and laws and what have you. We're now, certainly in Europe, Kevin, well on the way to a centralized dictatorship in Europe called the European Union. And what is that doing? That's now bringing the nations together. So that all those nations are now going to be and are dictated from a central point. Something like 75 to 80% of laws that are rubber stamped, because that's all it is, going through the Westminster Parliament in London, originate from unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. The idea, of course, is to have this super state structure in the Americas. Also in Africa, we now have a African Union, which took over from the Organization of African Unity. We have the pressure to and moves to bring about an Asia-Pacific Union. And these unions are centralizing power to dictate to the nation states in their area. Above that, and this is where it's moving, is to create a world government which would dictate to the superstates, which would dictate to the countries, and they want to break the countries up into regions eventually, and the maps exist to prove it, and they want a world central bank to dictate global finance from the center, a world currency, which eventually would be a single cashless currency. They want a world army to impose the will of the world government on any area of the world that doesn't want to accept the dictates, and they want a microchip population connected to a global computer, and we're getting closer to that all the time. So this is the structure, and when you know, A, the structure they want, and B, the techniques they use to mass manipulate the collective mind to get there, which are creating the problem, telling the people a version of the problem that suits you, i.e. blame someone else or something for what you've actually done. And then when the people say, do something, this can't go on, you then openly offer the solutions to the problems you've created with changes in legislation and society which advance your Orwellian state. I call that technique, problem, reaction, solution. Swine flu followed by the vaccine, mass vaccination is problem, reaction, solution. 9/11, blame it on Arab terrorists that couldn't fly aircraft, and then introduce the war on terror and the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq, which was as a result of this war on terror. They wouldn't have got it through otherwise. And these are problem, reaction, solutions. And the other one technique is the totalitarian tiptoe, I call it. And that's where you're at A, you know you're going to Z, but if you go in too big a leap, the change is so fast that people look up from the game shows and say, what's going on? So you go from A to B to D to E as fast as you can, but not so fast that you cause people to look up and ask questions about what's going on. And so these coordinates of the structure they want and the techniques they use to get us there, once you know them, then you can see the world in a completely different way and read it in a totally different way. No longer are things happening in the world random and unconnected. You can see that they are connected to a very clear journey forward, if you like, towards this centralized superstate that we are, global superstate that we're talking about.
Now, this one world currency and this one world government, how far away do you think it is?
Well, problem, reaction, solution, Kevin, certainly applies to the financial crash, which was came to light in September last year. That was completely engineered. I've written at length about that on my website for years, and it was coordinated to a very large extent by Alan Greenspan, the longtime head of the Federal Reserve, which is a private cartel of banks which masquerades as the central bank of the American government.
What website, if people want to get your materials, your books, and see your speaking schedule?
It's davidicke.com. And
spell that out for us.
David, and then it's ICKE.com.
Okay, DavidICKE.com. David Icke is with us today. Stay with us. This is Kevin Trudeau. We're going to be right back in just a moment.